Sources tell CBS News former President Donald Trump is considering announcing a 2024 White House bid as early as this summer. He has hinted at making a run during multiple campaign-style rallies this year. It would be Trump's third presidential campaign. Sources tell us the former president and his team are looking into his options for announcing a bid, but no final decision has been made on a timeline or whether President Trump will actually even run at all. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins me now with more from Washington. Bob, I did the math. If the Iowa caucuses are held on the 1st of February, that's 576 days from now. President Trump announced in 2015, so this would be a year earlier. Why the rush?
Wow. That long till Iowa. It's not that long, I guess. I haven't had a good pork sandwich in Des Moines in quite some time, John. Now you got my mind running. This is a calculation for Trump. It's of course, very, very early. It's odd almost to be thinking about a former president announcing a comeback run 2 years before the election. But I've been talking to sources after the New York Times came out with a story along these lines, and they confirmed that Trump is looking at this. And the reason he's doing so is he wants to get back into the political spotlight, and he wants to take control of the GOP. He believes he has it in part, in spirit, and why not try to formalize it, get into the 2024 race early. But as you know, as a student, as a master of presidential history with whistle stop and everything else, that there's no guarantee here if you get in that you somehow can consolidate the base. This is a party that will go in the direction it wants to go, not necessarily in Trump's.
Is he feeling any heat from the January 6th committee hearings?
He has vented about the January 6th hearings on social media platforms, not on Twitter, but on conservative social media platforms. And you see in Trump's inner circle this belief that he wants himself or other members of the Republican Party to get out there more. So part of the motivation, I'm told by one person close to Trump, is that he sees this January 6th committee out there without Republicans beyond Adam Kinzinger of Illinois and Liz Cheney of Wyoming, who are anti-Trump, on the committee. The Republicans chose not to be part of this committee in the way it was outlined. He's just unhappy with having this view of the committee presented and not having his view presented. So one thought is, in his inner circle, is why not just get in the race and have him voice his own point of view?
And Bob, how does this then change, if it changes it, the midterms, his formal announcement of a candidacy?
Well, it complicates the midterms. It complicates potentially the Justice Department. How will Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, handle a possible prosecution of a former president, should that former president now be seeking elected of office in a formal way and in an announced way? That will be a challenging legal and political issue for the Attorney General. And for the midterms, Democrats see the entry of Trump, possible entry here, as something that would remind voters of where the Republican Party was and where it could go again.
Last question, Bob, is give me your assessment of President Trump's influence in the party in two ways. One, as a candidate picker, as a person who gives his endorsement or withholds it, and how much sway that has. And then just as the kind of spiritual force that sometimes creates the conditions for candidates to behave just like Donald Trump, even if he never, doesn't even know their name. That's another kind of influence he can have on the party. Give me your assessment of how strong those two different kinds of influence are.
The latter influence appears to be more formidable based on my reporting over the past few months, in the sense that he is this cloud over the Republican Party. He has changed the culture of the Republican Party. Many candidates are running in his image. They're running on issues that are very much of the Trump platform, on trade, a nationalistic message when it comes to foreign policy. But his political capital doesn't extend to every race. And voters, as I've traveled across the country, say, we respect President Trump. We listen to President Trump. This is on the Republican side. But they don't necessarily take his cue on every race. So he has power in the sense that the party has not departed from Trumpism, this version of Republican politics he has created over the past 7 years. But they're not enthralled to him in the same way they might have been in, say, January 2017.
So I have a little more time, so I can sneak in my last question, which is the January 6th committee is going to have hearings later this month. They've subpoenaed former White House counsel Pat Cipollone. Adam Schiff told our Margaret Brennan that the committee's in discussions with Cipollone. What do we know, if anything, about those discussions? But what do lawmakers want to hear from Cipollone?
Well, they would love a John Dean moment from this White House counsel to just open up and let loose in terms of testimony, to tell the story as vividly as possible about those final days of the Trump administration in and around the Capitol attack. But Cipollone, having covered him for the last few years, is someone who is a bit taciturn. He's cooperating with the committee to a point in the sense that he's engaged in discussions with the committee. But his friends tell me he's not likely to be a John Dean. He doesn't want to be up there in the role of Cassidy Hutchinson, of really telling us a story that's complete and full of detail. He believes, as White House counsel, a former White House counsel, he has executive privilege obligations. But that's not necessarily up for him to decide. We will see how this plays out. The committee is certainly trying to pressure him to say a little more.
All right, Robert Costa, thanks as always for being with us.
Thank you.